So we're getting into the nitty gritty here. So this is how you build a control panel. I'm pretty sure you wanted to skip to this part just to figure this out really fast. So it's always the finish work that gets all the meat here, right? So I've got a couple different examples. I've got the two control panels from our little mini cabinets that we're making for all the examples of everything. With both of these cabinets, I'm going to do basically two different ways of mounting our joysticks, doing our control panel layout. This one here, our plywood cabinet, is just going to be like a one-player 19-in-1 JAMA setup when we are all said and done wiring it. And for our MDF, since it's a little bit of a bigger control panel, we're going to do a two-player. It might be a MAME, I'm not sure. Maybe I'll do that as a 19-in-1 and the other one as a Raspberry Pi or something. We'll see how it goes. That's why I love doing this, because it's kind of organic and I can go with the flow, because I can make it up as I go, and so can you. So with these control panel tops that I'm showing you right now, the above one is our kits. When you buy a control panel kit from us, this is the way it comes. One side is raw, one side is finished. I'll show you that in a second. And this is for our Origin stand-up arcade, which is the full-size version of our little mini ones that we're doing. Okay, so we always do them 6-button, 2-player setup. We put in Pandora's boxes, other JAMA stuff, and we'll put in Raspberry Pis, whatever people want for those. They're just kind of a standard entry-level cabinet that we do for 2-player, and they're pretty standard. So this one here, the reason why I'm showing you these things is the joystick mounting, the ways to mount your joystick. So you have multiple ways of doing this. No way is worse than another, other than strictly just putting screws directly into the panel and calling it a day. Okay, so the ways that we're going to show you is this way on our Origin. They literally go straight through the panel to the other side. We do carriage bolts all the way through, so we'll decal that, do all that fun stuff, and then we put a carriage bolt right through it. It's the tightest, strongest way to do this. That's the way you always see 4 bolts around some of the Street Fighters and stuff like that, of the old school ones that have that. It's because it is the strongest setup for your joystick. Secondly, or second strongest, would be these nylon dowels. Okay, so these little dowel inserts, they're used for Euro hinges. So you can use them for this as well. They're pretty sturdy, they last forever. You can kind of take your joystick on and off with this, so you can switch it out, do whatever you need to do. We provide these, and in the 2 separate hole patterns in all of our kits. So this is what it looks like before we put the dowel in it, and then that's what it looks like after the dowel. This is the dowel that we put in. We use a CNC to cut these, but if you're going to do it by hand, you're going to need 2 separate bits to do that. One to do a pilot hole, and the second one here where we have our our little stopper on here to go the depth that we need to go, and then you just hammer them in and make sure that it's nice and tight. These are barbed, so they go in, and if they come out, they destroy everything on the way out. So once you have them in, they're in forever. If you put them in too loose and they start to spin, which happens to some people when they go through it and make the hole a little too big, if it spins like that, there's really not a lot you can do. You have to pull it out, fill it with Bondo or something, and then put it back in, but then it's never going to be as strong. It's not going to be the same. All right, so we're going to show you just screwing it into the wood and doing it directly, which will hold, that's fine. And then we're going to probably go all the way through the other one on one of these ones, like this setup here, which is the best. This one here, since we do it in our kits and everything else, we've shown you how to router things out and make your own little jig and do all that stuff. So you can apply that technique to this type of setup if you want to do that. You would just trace out your joystick setup that you have on here, make a mount around it, make the jig, put your router in, drop it in 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch, however depth you want to do it, and then put it in. Just make sure that you drill your holes for your joystick first, unless you're going to go straight into the wood. If it's particle board and stuff like that, I definitely highly recommend not doing that. If it is plywood, you can do that. It's not as bad. It's a lot stronger. MDF, you got one shot at it. So if those screws ever come out, it'll destroy that MDF, and you have to either go all the way through with carriage bolts, or you're going to have to replace that console top. So yeah, those are the 3 options or 4 options that you have basically to do this. I would go with one of these 2 that are up above here. That's the best way to go. Drilling directly in is kind of, you win some, you lose some when you do that. If you don't mind replacing your console top, go ahead. As you can see here, we got some layouts and stuff. They'll be available to you in PDF form online here through this subscription service, and you'll also get names and different types of layouts and stuff like that for that. There'll be a whole bunch for you to choose from, and we'll keep adding them as we go along. I don't really use these as much, but these specific ones with the small console tops, even if we do the 1-2 player, we're only going to do like 3 buttons on them. So there's not a lot going on with these based off of what we're putting in them. But obviously, if you're building a bigger cabinet, you're going to go into like a 2-player, 6-button setup or more, 4-player, whatever, that type of a thing. So it depends on how ergonomic you want to get. We are going to be moving forward and drawing these out, map it out. So we've set up our control panels. I've drawn them out, so I'm just going to show them to you before we set ourselves up to actually drill the holes in here. Now, the extra lines and stuff that we have on here, all that stuff doesn't really matter. We're just drawing on here the way we have just to make sure that our holes line up properly. You can get to that conclusion however you want. Now, I want to make 2 notes here. So one is we are drawing this on the top of the control panel, not from underneath, okay? So we are going straight in through the top. The other thing I wanted to make note is these control panels are actually really, really small. Not that you care or that it matters in the sense, but I just wanted you guys to see this so that you understand that it doesn't matter how you mount these. So the actual mount for the joystick has a specific shape to it. Now, normally we would mount it like, you know, so on here, right? You can turn that to any way you want it. So to save room and get ourselves to squish in there properly, we are turning the joystick what some would consider sideways, okay? It doesn't matter if one's this way, one's that way, one's this way, one's that way. I mean, it doesn't look very good. It doesn't look very professional. I wouldn't do that and change them, but I would definitely let you know that you can change the direction on these, and it doesn't matter when you're installing it, just to save space if you have a smaller size cabinet. These are full-size joysticks, by the way, so that's the reason why that's going to happen. That's pretty much about it. We're going to get started on our cuts. We are going to be using our step bit. It was covered with wax on our other videos there because it was a newly sharpened bit. These step bits go through wood, metal, and they say cement. I wouldn't advise that by any means. And they are very expensive, so I definitely wouldn't put it through anything that was harder than certain metals, right? Okay, so they start, I think, at about 50 to 80 bucks American. So yeah, depending on which one you get. Don't get a cheap one from Princess Auto unless you're using it once. All right, so we're gonna clamp these down and we're gonna move it and get it all ready to go. The way we've clamped this here, we're only going to do 1 hole, and then we're going to flip it around and clamp it from the other side just to make sure it's safe, right? You want to be safe. Safety first. So also, while he flips this around here, I will mention that if you've been paying attention through all these lessons, you've seen that we've always told you to drill halfway through the top and get a little hole through the bottom as your pilot, flip it over, and then drill it from the other side, and so on and so forth. We did not do that with this step bit, nor are we going to. Now, it will chew up the bottom of your console regardless of what you do with plywood. With MDF, it will probably not do that, okay? So everything depends on the wood that you're using. The higher quality of plywood that you're using, the less it will do it, but it probably will still fray. That's what I mean by chewed up. Now, all you have to do is just break those off, sand that down nicely, and the nut from your button or whatever will cover all this stuff. The other thing with this too is this bit is exactly 1 1/8. That's what you want to buy. You don't want to step up from that to another bit and so on and so forth. This fits a button exactly. All right, so there you have it. You have yourself a little console. We'll clean off the back or whatever afterwards. We'll show you that all cleaned up. So that's drawing to fruition. So we're going to do this one next. We'll set it up and you can watch it and see how it happens through MDF. So on this one here, you can kind of see the holes that I've got. I've lined them up to the bench there so that it won't touch the bench, but I want to get as much surface area clamped down as I can here so that I'm not re-clamping it, you know, every hole that I'm putting in here. So we're going to do this side, and then we'll flip it over and do the other. So as you can see, much different. Now, if you were to sand that, it's frayed a little bit, but it's actually a very nice cut on the inside in comparison to the other one. So. The other thing I wanted to mention too, here, hold on a second, I want to show you, is this hole here is our joystick hole. We're cutting it the same size as our button hole. We here always do. It doesn't matter. The bigger the hole, the better. The dust cover covers it anyway. But you want to have, we put different joysticks in some of these different spots all the time. So we want to make sure that we have a proper amount of throw for the joystick to go in all directions. And this is an example of the button fitting in right after. So moving on to the next holes. And MDF is just like butter. Yeah, there's not much to finishing the MDF when it's all done, I'll tell you. It's kind of nice. You can see that nice round front on that console. Yeah, that was just done by hand, super easy. You can see that in our finishing section on how to do that. He's just taking extra time to model those hands of his here. It's a hand model supreme. All right, so there you have it. 2 finished console tops set up the way we want them. So 1-player 3-button and 2-player 3-button. These buttons will probably come really close to each other on here just because it's so small. But that's the way we decided to do it. You can do it any way you want. There is no right or wrong way except for your personal preference. And yeah, we'll sand these up and we'll show them to you all finished. So we finished drilling all our holes. You think we're ready to go and it's all good to go, we're ready to rock, but we're not. So we're laying out our joystick still. Like I said before, on this, the way these joysticks are gonna sit in themselves on the console itself, we have to figure out how we're gonna mount them, okay? So you have a couple different options like I showed at the beginning of this, but we are going to go with drilling this or screwing this directly into the wood. And we'll show you how we'll do that, what type of screws we'll use. And we're going to use carriage bolts for this one, going straight through the actual control panel itself, right through, and then holding the joystick on through that top there. So you can see on here it has a smooth top. Everything's down by the bottom, or done by the nut on the bottom, and that has a kind of locking nut mechanism on the bottom there so that it shouldn't come off at any given time for any reason. You can always tighten it up and do that type of a thing. So when we put a decal and stuff on here, you're going to cut your holes for your joysticks, buttons, and everything, and you're also going to cut your hole for your little screw holes that go through there. So we're going to start off by getting ready and drilling these holes. We're going to drill them from the top again. The reason why we drill everything through the top on these control panels is because you do not want to have any sort of blowout or breakout on the control top, because then you have to spend all your time finishing and dealing with all that stuff. So that in itself, for information and stuff, is worth its weight in gold, because you'll pay the price and then you'll be bondoing it and fixing it forever, and then you'll have this blemish on there that you see forever and it'll drive you nuts. So don't want that. So we'll just give her, drill away. So we're going to freehand these. There's not much to it. You want to drill it just like about 1 millimeter bigger than the actual carriage bolt. So and you'll see what I mean on the bottom here. So I'll let them drill through, and then I'll show you how it blows out in the bottom. So it's not much, but that little bit there, you're going to want some perfection, because there's not enough to hide that. So you're going to want to fill that somehow and do whatever. A sharp bit might not do that, and it might not do that on every one, but when it does it on one, you're going to have to, you know, piss around to try to fix it. So this way you ensure yourself getting a nice sharp edge around that hole on your finished product. All right, so nice and simple. This thing's starting to look like a control panel. Like I said before, we're going to sand it down. I'm going to show you these, and then we'll screw them all down, and you'll see how it functions and how it's all set up. And then obviously you take it apart, paint it, and put your decals and all that fun stuff on it. But so we're going to go straight to, we're going to skip a couple steps, and I'm just going to show you how these get mounted in. You may or may not want to dry fit this in like we're doing, but usually what happens is we finish the console first. So we would paint it, put a decal on it, do all that fun stuff, and then we'll mount this stuff. The reason for us to do that, when we've got the hole all the way through kind of scenario, it doesn't matter as much. But when we're just putting a screw directly into wood like this, every time you put it in and then take it out, put it in and take it out, it loosens up and it rips apart the wood and weakens that spot. Okay, so you don't want to do that very often at all. All right, so basically, if you can do it the first time and leave it, that would be the best scenario. So if you can paint this and do all the fun stuff that you're going to do with it before you do this, you can mark these holes out and just put like a little nick with a drill bit or something to mark where you're going to drill your holes in if you need that, just in case you paint the whole thing. But for now, we're just going to show you how it's done on the raw part so you can see it all done instead of you know, waiting till the end here, because that might take a while, and I know you're anxious. All right, we're gonna fire it up. So this screw here is a 3/4 inch pan head wood screw, and then this is a nice like number 8 crush washer. We like to use these all the time. These crush washers kind of work a little bit better in this case scenario than a lock washer. We find that the lock washers tend to let go where this kind of like embeds itself into the nylon or the plastic here, as you'll see. So we'll fire it up and check it out. We already got a couple others loaded there, so we can make this fast. So we left our lines on there. We sanded everything off except for those lines, just so that we could set this up pretty quick. This console needs a bunch of different finishes before we actually go ahead with doing an actual install. So you'll also notice that he hasn't let the drill go to its maximum potential and start clicking. The reason for that is that we are going to take this out and put it in again later after we finish everything, and then he's giving himself a little bit of meat to play with on the end of that so that we can get it going. All right, so this is our joystick, and then when you look inside, it should be dead center to the hole. All right. I'll put this one together so that you can see the throw that we're putting on it, and then we'll also put the joysticks in here so you can kind of see how it's all going to pan out and how we mount them all. All right, we've got a full mock-up here. So it looks a little awkward in a sense because what I wanted to do is I left this dust plate off the joystick. Obviously it goes over top and it covers this part of the hole there. I left it off because of what I wanted to pinpoint here is the actuator on the joystick, right? So I want to show that we're not touching the edge of the wood when we do this, right? A lot of these drawings and stuff that you'll see online and things, the hole is actually smaller than the buttonholes. When you make it smaller, you actually limit the throw of the joystick. So the action and movement on here. So you can't fully depress the buttons on the joystick on the bottom. All right, so that's why we make the hole a little bit bigger, right? We make them the same size as the buttons. So if you're worried about doing that, this is why we do it. Now, if you have a smaller joystick like a JLF or a Zippy or something like that, the shaft on the joysticks are a little bit thinner and stuff, so you don't need as big of a hole, but the dust plate that comes with them as well will cover that no matter what. So I wouldn't be overly concerned with that unless you have a very, very specific intention behind that. All right, so this is the actual layout of what our console is going to be, and we're going to show it to you on the machine. So we're getting closer and closer to a finished product. So this is what it's going to look like, nice and centered into our actual cabinet. Sorry to flip it on you there. It's kind of hard to show, but yeah, we had to turn the joystick a little sideways because it is snug as a bug under there with the 3/4 inch wood piece that we have on the front here as well. All right, this will be getting T-mold in the front. We'll be finishing it off, and then in our monitor videos, we'll show you how to cut out the monitors and stuff to fit in there properly as well. But for now, here's your joysticks for our one-player plywood cabinet. So this is our console with the joysticks mounted from the top via carriage bolts, so they go all the way through. This is kind of a different mounting system. Now this is the strongest setup that you're going to get. People don't like the ugly bolts and stuff coming through the top. You can get them in different colors or powder coated or paint them yourself, that type of a thing. If you paint them yourself, if you don't use an enamel, it'll wear off. As this sits right now, we know that they're very small control panels. We know that they're only 3 buttons, so on and so forth. They're crammed together. Yes, I know. It's personal preference. This is only, for example, it's not going to anybody. We're not really using it. Might throw it in the boogie van or the RV or something. You never know. But other than that, it's just for example here. So if you're getting all judgy, I guess that's on you and that's your problem. But we don't have a player 1 button or a player 2 button because we'll also be setting it up for free play, or you can put the buttons somewhere else on the machine if you like. I'm going to show you the bottom here, how it's all mounted. So with the screws and nuts on here, we also put on washers, so those nuts actually have like a kind of a locking mechanism on the end of that, on the other side of the nut there, and it will lock onto that washer and not come loose. All right, also just to say on here what we do with these buttons, you can notice that they'll all be in the same direction. That will save you a lot of grief when wiring and troubleshooting your machine later, trust me. So just take it under advisement and make sure that you kind of follow suit and do the same. I will be showing you how to do all that stuff when we do our wiring for all of our control panels in our wiring section. All right, so I wanted you to be able to see what it looks like on the cabinet as we did with the plywood one. You can see that we're doing them a little bit differently to give you guys a little bit of options and styles. This one has a rounded front. So we're gonna seal all this with paint and make it all nice, and then we're gonna finish it off with a decal. This will be removable. So the decal, when we do it, we're gonna either put one on the front. If we do it, it will match and flow through, but they will be cut and separated so that can be removed later. Also, you'll see that all the monitors haven't been done yet because we're not there yet, and we'll go through that process with you. And I have a strange feeling that we're going to be throwing a coin door in the bottom of this one as well. So we're going to do a coin door video on how to add it before and after. It's all the same, doesn't matter. As long as you do it during the process with the raw cabinet, we should be good to go. And of course, we are not going to let you miss out on any of the tips and tricks to finish and troubleshoot some of these scratches, damages, anything that we've done during the building process, and go over that with you as well. We'll sand it down and finish it all in the next lessons and tutorials in the next section. So we are getting underway, and they're starting to look like arcade machines.